Hi everyone, it's Sunday. I'm in the studio and I thought I would do a quick video to show you an interesting way to do an underpainting and introduce you to a new medium that perhaps you've not used, and if you have used it, I want to show you some tips on how to get the most out of it for an underpainting medium. So what we're going to be working with today are the Inktense blocks by Derwent. Inktense blocks by Derwent, and I'll be putting a link when I write up a description for this video, so you'll be able to see what they are. You can get them at any online art store, and they come in individual sticks, or you can get them in sets. This is a set of 24. Let me open it so you can see what they are. And I want to send out a special thank you to one of my followers and friends who sent me this set of 24 along with this apron that she made to my special criteria, and I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but she's even put my initials, my signature in. Very subtle but very elegantly done, and I want to thank her for that generous gift, so thank you. And I'm really excited about using these. I bought some of these open stock, so I had maybe 2 or 3 sticks, and now that I have a bigger set, I'm really excited to use them. So first of all, let's talk about underpainting and what that is. Underpainting to me is the first layer of a pastel painting. It can be simply toning the paper. It can be doing a underpainting with dry pastel and just rubbing it in with some kind of tool. It can be wet pastel, so I could put down a layer of pastel and wet it with water or alcohol or turpenoid, and so that you get a wet, drippy underpainting. Or you can use another medium entirely, and you can pretty much use any medium as long as it's thin enough that it doesn't clog the tooth of the paper. Meaning you want it so thin that you're able to put layers and layers of pastel on top. So for example, if you use acrylic paint, if you use it too thickly, obviously you won't get pastel on top of it. But if you thin it with enough water where it becomes a wash, you can easily get more pastel on top of it. So underpainting, simply put, is the first layer of the painting, and it can be, you have millions of options for underpaintings. So today I want to show you just one of those, and that is using these Inktense sticks with water. So let's talk about what they are. I'll just pull one up. Inktense sticks are ink, okay, they are ink in stick form. So if you've ever worked with liquid inks, like that, liquid inks, you'll know what I mean. It's like becomes liquid ink as soon as you wet it. We're going to wet it with water, but you can also wet it with alcohol. And so what's nice about these is that they're portable, right? So easier to carry a bunch of sticks around than a bunch of bottles of ink. And that you can get them in lots of colors, and you can combine colors to make new colors. When you wet them, they explode into really intense colors, hence the name Inktense, just as though your liquid inks will do. So what I want to do is a very quick demonstrate how I use them for an underpainting. I have already done the drawing for my painting. Can you see this? This is the reference photo. So it's some yellow, I believe they're cottonwood trees, so they're in their prime yellow fall foliage. And I've already taken the liberties of using a pencil and drawing in my big shapes on my board. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Inktense sticks to simply color in this whole area using the sticks and choosing some colors, and then I'll wet it down. So I'm going to first start off by blocking in the yellow foliage. And you might say, well, what color am I going to use to block in the yellow foliage? And my first instinct was to maybe use the complement of yellow, which is violet or purple. But what I have discovered with working with yellow, that it's sometimes really hard to get it as intense as you want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use different shades of yellow so that I can get a head start. So I started off by putting in some ochre color, some yellow green, and this is finally a nice bright yellow. And I'm just kind of scribbling this on here. You don't have to, with these Inktense sticks, because they're intense, you don't have to block it in with a heavy hand. They very much remind me of the art graph sticks that I have been talking about. Now I like this really nice bright bit of yellow light that's on the grass, so I'm going to block that in with this yellow green. And once I got the yellow foliage, I'm going to put in, I think I'll block in the dark, I guess there's some sort of evergreen tree in the distance. And I'm going to use blue. They're probably green, but I want them to go into the distance a little bit more, so I'm going to block it in with blue. And there's a darker blue, I'm going to put the darker blue at the base. There's a pathway that I want to put in, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put that pathway in with the ochre color that I've used in the tree. If you want a better color harmony, it's nice to repeat some of the colors you're using rather than, I'm tempted to use every single color in this set, but then I might destroy any kind of color harmony. So I'm going to go ahead and try to limit my palette. Now I need a sky color, and there's a very light bit of blue to the sky, so I think I'm going to just put some blue in the sky. I can always change the color of the sky and modify it. Remember, this is the underpainting, right? So it's the first layer. We're going to be putting pastel on top. And then finally we have some green grass. So I'm going to put some color underneath the grass. I'm going to go with a reddish color, because I know I'm going to have some green, and the red is going to be the complement of the green. So in this case, I think it'll work nicely with the colors that I plan on putting in at the end. And then finally, we've got some dark tree trunks. So these cottonwoods have really intensely dark, oops, I pressed a little too hard on that one, intensely dark trunks. So I'm going to just put a few of those in. And that's the extent of the block in with the Inktense. Now comes the fun part, and that's wetting it down and making a wet underpainting. Now, a lot of times people ask, what kind of brush do I use for an underpainting? So we have a stiff bristle brush. You can see it's been used a lot and it's kind of worn down. Because it's unsanded paper, that'll happen. And then you have this nice soft brush. This is I think it's a Robert Simmons Utrecht brush. It's very soft. You will get a different effect with a soft brush versus the stiff brush. I tend to prefer the stiff brush because I like to scrub in the liquid. I'm going to show you both. This is the, and I'm going to start with the lightest color. This is with the stiff brush. And if you could get close so that, with the camera, Michael, so that you can see how I'm scrubbing this in. Alright, so I like that because I can really get in there and scrub. Here's with the soft brush.
Tell about the water.
I'm just using regular water. I'm using regular water. You can use alcohol. The difference being alcohol dries slightly faster and drips in a different way. So you can see with the smoother brush, you get a smoother stroke. So maybe that works better for the sky area. If it starts to drip, I really don't mind. In fact, I love the drips. I say embrace the drips, because that's what gives that wonderful, unexpected quality to the wet underpainting. I'm going to go ahead and keep working with the stiffer brush. Now, one thing I want to say about any type of wet underpainting, whether you're using Inktense or whether you're using pastel, whatever medium you're using, once you have a paintbrush in your hand, you want to slow down and paint with the brush and not be a house painter. And what does a house painter do? Comes in and paints from top to bottom in one nice, smooth, even stroke, right? That's the ideal house painter. We don't want that because we want some interesting things to happen. So when you have that brush in your hand, don't just wet the medium down, but rather paint as if you were painting with the pastel or with a paintbrush. So if I'm painting tree foliage, for example, I'm going to make scrubby brush strokes as if I was painting with a paintbrush loaded with paint. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and keep on scrubbing this in. Also, it's not a race to get this underpainting set. So take your time. The more time you take with the underpainting, then the less time you might have to do with the pastel. Because if you get an underpainting that is working really well in the underpainting stage, that's less work you have to do to finish the painting. So I always like to remind myself that it is not a race, to not rush through this whole underpainting stage, and to just take my time wetting down the liquid, or in this case the Inktense. And I think you can tell how wonderful and brilliant this Inktense is when it's wet. So like if you like to do, say, for example, watercolor underpainting, and you're not happy with your watercolor underpainting because it tends to feel wishy-washy and soft, try these Inktense sticks because you have control. You can make or mix new color combinations, and you get this wonderful, rich, dark underpainting. Now I don't know if you can zoom in the camera so that you're just looking at this underpainting, because already some really interesting things are happening where this sky is dripping on top of the distant trees, and you get this really cool dripping things. And then up in here you can see where the yellow is starting to drip, and you get these really interesting dripping kind of action, you could say. Now, you could do things as it's starting to dry, such as spritzing it perhaps with some alcohol or even some water. You can draw into it, so I'm going back into it while it's starting to dry and pulling up the dark so that I can maybe indicate some more tree trunks very lightly. Another fun thing you can do is it's starting to dry, and I didn't bring it over, but if you were to spritz it or lay it flat and put water, just drip water on it. I don't think it'll work standing up. I can try it. So you can get some really interesting effects when you go back in while the underpainting is drying. So, I forgot to mention, I want to mention I'm working on UArt sanded paper, and it's mounted. It's one of their older mounted boards that had a border. Their newer mounted surface does not have a border. It's done on a different surface. So working on mounted paper gives you less of a chance of things buckling, especially if you get things really wet. So that's something to think about, although I do work on unmounted paper and really have no problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to post this video so that you can see this, and then I'm going to do a painting step by step, and that will be posted in a later post. So I hope you have enjoyed this and have fun with your Inktense sticks. Thanks!